My husband left me for a 23-year-old while I was losing my hair to chemotherapy. He thought he'd won. He thought I was too weak, too sick, too broken to fight back. But what he didn't know was that the £3 million penthouse he bought to impress her, it came with a debt that would destroy him. And I made sure of it. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your life, if you've ever felt like the universe was against you, stay with me. Because this story proves that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well. It's watching karma work faster than you ever imagined. And trust me, you need to hear how this ends. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I turned my husband's betrayal into my greatest victory. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, life has a funny way of showing you who people really are when things get hard. My name is Sarah, and I'm going to tell you a story that changed my entire life. It's a story about love, betrayal, and how sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best revenge. For 13 years, I thought I had everything figured out. I was living in Manchester, England, working as a senior consultant for a big tech company. My husband, Daniel, owned a construction firm that built commercial buildings all over the north of England. We had a beautiful Victorian house in Cheshire, nice cars in the driveway, and holidays to places most people only dream about. From the outside looking in, we were the perfect couple. We were happy. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Daniel and I had made a choice early on that we didn't want children. We loved our careers, we loved traveling, and honestly, we enjoyed our freedom. Some people understood. Others whispered behind our backs. But we didn't care. We had each other, or so I thought. We could be spontaneous. We could take off to Barcelona for the weekend just because we felt like it. We had money to spend and time to enjoy it. Looking back now, I realize I was so focused on building this picture-perfect life that I missed what was happening right under my nose. Then everything changed in a single moment. It was a regular Tuesday morning last April when I found the lump. You know that feeling when your stomach drops and your whole world tilts sideways? That was me, standing in the shower, feeling something that shouldn't be there. I went to the doctor the next day, and a week later, I heard the words that nobody ever wants to hear. Cancer. Breast cancer. Stage 2. I remember sitting in that doctor's office, the walls closing in around me, thinking this can't be real. The doctor was talking about treatment options, about surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. But all I could hear was this ringing in my ears. My whole life, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned, suddenly felt like it was slipping through my fingers like sand. When I told Daniel that night, he held me tight. He said all the right things. We'll fight this together. You're strong. We'll get through it. I believed him. God, I really believed him. For the first few weeks, he seemed like the husband I'd married. He came to my appointments. He held my hand when the doctors explained the treatment plan. He even started cooking dinner because I was too exhausted to stand in the kitchen for long. But then things started to change. Little things at first. Things so small that I told myself I was imagining them because I was stressed and scared. Daniel started staying late at work. Almost every night. Big project, he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. You understand, right? And I did understand. I understood that his business was important. I understood that he had deadlines and clients and responsibilities. But somewhere deep down, a little voice was whispering that something wasn't right. His phone became like an extension of his body. He never put it down. He'd take it to the bathroom, to the garden, even to bed. Before my diagnosis, Daniel had been so relaxed about his phone. He'd leave it lying around, ask me to check his messages while he was driving. Now, it was like Fort Knox. When it rang, he'd step outside. When it buzzed, he'd angle it away from me. Work stuff, he'd say. Nothing important. The loneliness started to creep in like a fog. Chemotherapy is brutal. If you've never been through it, I hope you never have to. You sit in a chair for hours while they pump poison into your veins. Poison that's supposed to kill the cancer, but kills everything else too. Your hair falls out in clumps. Your body aches like you've been hit by a truck. You feel sick all the time. And you're surrounded by other people going through the same thing, most of them with family members holding their hands, reading to them, just being there. Daniel came to my first 2 chemo sessions. Then suddenly he was always too busy. Client meeting. Site inspection. Emergency at the office. Always something. Always an excuse. I'd sit there alone, watching other patients with their loved ones, and I'd feel this emptiness growing inside me that had nothing to do with cancer. My friends started acting strange too. My best friend, Rachel, would visit and get this look on her face. This careful, sad look like she was walking on eggshells. She'd start to say something, then stop herself. "How are things with Daniel?" She'd begin, then shake her head. "Never mind." That happened more than once. I knew she knew something. But I was so tired, so focused on just surviving each day, that I didn't push her to tell me. Looking back now, all the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. When you're fighting for your life, you need to believe that the people you love have your back. You need that anchor, that certainty. The thought that your husband might be betraying you while you're going through the worst thing you've ever faced? That's too much. So you make excuses. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You blame it on the medication or the stress or the fear. But the truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? And when it did, it shattered everything I thought I knew about my life and the man I'd spent 13 years with. The truth hit me on a Thursday afternoon. I was having one of those rough days after chemo where you can't keep anything down and your body feels like it's made of lead. I was lying on the couch, scrolling through Instagram, just trying to distract myself from how awful I felt. That's when I saw her. Her name was Ashley. She was 23 years old with long blonde hair, perfect white teeth, and the kind of body that comes from expensive personal trainers and even more expensive cosmetic surgery. She called herself a lifestyle influencer, which as far as I could tell meant she took photos of herself in expensive places and convinced companies to give her free stuff. She had about 50,000 followers, and every single photo was filtered within an inch of its life. But it wasn't her that made my blood run cold. It was what was in her photo. She'd posted a mirror selfie, the kind where you're showing off your outfit. And there in the reflection, clear as day, was a watch. A men's watch. A very specific men's watch. The Breitling I'd bought Daniel for our 10th anniversary. The one with his initials engraved on the back. My hands started shaking. I clicked through to her profile and started scrolling back through her posts. And there they were. Clues everywhere. Photos from restaurants that Daniel and I had been to together. Pictures taken at locations that looked exactly like the construction sites Daniel said he was working on. A shot from inside a hotel room that I recognized from a business trip Daniel had taken to London 2 months earlier. But the final piece, the thing that made me absolutely certain, was in her Instagram stories. There was a video from the night before. Someone's hands, men's hands, pouring champagne into 2 glasses. I knew those hands. I'd held them on our wedding day. I'd watched them sign our mortgage papers. And there, clear as anything, was his wedding ring. My husband's wedding ring. I sat there on that couch, still feeling sick from chemo, staring at my phone, and something inside me just broke. Then it got angry. Really, really angry. When Daniel walked through the door that evening, I was waiting. I'd printed out every single photo. They were spread across our kitchen table like evidence at a trial. He saw them before he even put his briefcase down. And you know what? He didn't even try to lie. The relief on his face was almost worse than the betrayal itself. "Thank God, he said, sitting down like we were about to discuss what to have for dinner. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." No apology. No explanation. Just relief that he didn't have to pretend anymore. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "How long?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. 5 months, he said. 5 months. My entire diagnosis. The surgery. The start of chemotherapy. While I was losing my hair and throwing up every morning and wondering if I was going to die, he was playing house with a 23-year-old girl who probably didn't know how to boil an egg. "You need to understand," Daniel said, and I could hear that he'd rehearsed this speech. "This isn't about you. You've been so focused on being sick." I felt like I was losing myself. Ashley makes me feel alive again. Alive again. As if getting cancer was a choice I'd made to inconvenience him. As if fighting for my life was somehow selfish. I just stared at him, this man I'd loved for 13 years, and realized I didn't know him at all. That night, Daniel packed a bag and left. No big fight. No begging for forgiveness. No tears or promises to work things out. He just left. I found out later that he'd been paying for Ashley's flat in the city center for 3 months. 3 months of my husband using our money to set up his mistress in a luxury apartment while I was going through hell. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. They were hand-delivered by a courier while I was getting ready to go to the hospital for another treatment. Daniel wasn't just leaving. He was trying to destroy me financially too. His lawyer had written this whole story painting me as an unstable, difficult wife who'd become impossible to live with during my illness. They wanted me to give up any claim to his business and accept barely anything in the settlement. But here's what Daniel didn't know. Here's what he'd completely underestimated. I might have been sick, but my brain was working perfectly fine. And I'd spent 15 years working in tech consulting, which means I know how to investigate things, how to dig for information, and how to build a case. I called a private investigator that same afternoon. His name was James, and he was a former detective who specialized in financial investigations. Within 10 days, James came back to me with information that made my jaw drop. That big construction project Daniel had been so secretive about, the one that kept him working late every single night, it didn't exist. Well, not the way he'd told me it existed. What actually existed was a penthouse apartment. A luxury penthouse in the middle of Manchester that Daniel had bought 7 months ago, right around the time I was diagnosed with cancer. The down payment, £250,000, had come from our joint investment account. Money that I'd assumed was going into his business. Money that was half mine. But here's the really beautiful part. Daniel hadn't bought the place outright. He'd taken out a massive mortgage. We're talking about monthly payments of £15,000, plus maintenance fees, plus property taxes. He'd been bleeding money trying to maintain this fantasy, trying to impress his young girlfriend, and his business was suffering badly because of it. James kept digging. He found that Daniel's construction company was in serious trouble. 3 major contracts had fallen through. He'd borrowed money against future projects that weren't guaranteed. He'd maxed out business credit cards. Meanwhile, Ashley was posting Instagram stories from the penthouse like she already owned it. Designer shopping trips, spa days, fancy dinner parties, all funded by my husband's rapidly disappearing money and growing mountain of debt. When I showed all of this to my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, her eyes lit up. He committed adultery, she said, leaning forward in her chair. He used marital funds to finance the affair. He hid major financial decisions from you during a serious illness. This isn't just grounds for divorce, Sarah. This is grounds for taking everything he has. The next few weeks felt like preparing for war. Patricia and James worked together like a well-oiled machine, gathering every piece of evidence they could find. Bank statements showing the secret penthouse purchase. Credit card bills revealing expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and romantic getaways for Ashley. Phone records proving exactly when the affair started. Email exchanges between Daniel and his estate agent discussing how to furnish the place to impress his girlfriend. Every new piece of evidence was like another dagger to my heart, but it was also ammunition. I was done being the victim. I was done being the sick wife he'd thrown away like yesterday's newspaper. Now I was going to be something else entirely. I was going to be the woman who made him regret every single choice he'd made. My health was improving too, which felt like perfect timing. The chemotherapy was working. My scans were coming back clean. My hair was starting to grow back in these little dark curls that I actually loved. I was getting stronger every day, and with that strength came a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I could see the whole picture now. I could see exactly what Daniel had done and exactly how to make him pay for it. The court date was set for a Tuesday morning in September. I remember getting dressed that morning, looking at myself in the mirror, and barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. I'd lost weight during treatment. My hair was still short, but there was something different in my eyes. Something harder. Something that said I'd been through hell and I'd survived, and now I was ready to fight. Patricia had warned me that Daniel would probably bring Ashley to court. Some men do that, she'd said. They want to show off their new life, prove they've moved on. It's a power play. Sure enough, when I walked into that courtroom, there they were. Daniel in his most expensive suit, the navy one I'd helped him pick out for his biggest client presentation. And Ashley hanging on his arm in a dress that probably cost more than most people earn in a month. They looked confident, almost smug, like they thought they'd already won. Ashley kept whispering in Daniel's ear and giggling. Daniel had this little smirk on his face, the one he used to wear when he'd closed a big business deal. They thought this was going to be easy. They thought I was going to be the weak, sick woman who'd just accept whatever scraps they threw at me. Then Patricia stood up and started presenting our case. I watched Daniel's face as she methodically laid out every piece of evidence. The bank records showing the penthouse purchase. The credit card statements. The phone records. The emails to the estate agent. The photos from Ashley's Instagram showing her in the penthouse, captioning them with things like my new home and living the dream. Daniel's smirk disappeared first. Then his face went pale. His lawyer kept objecting, trying to interrupt, but the judge shut him down every single time. Patricia was relentless. She showed how Daniel had started the affair during my cancer treatment. How he'd used our money I'd helped earn, to buy a secret love nest. How he'd tried to hide assets in the divorce. How he'd painted me as unstable when really, he was the one who'd abandoned his sick wife for a girl young enough to be his daughter. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and glasses that made her look like a headmistress. As the evidence mounted, her expression got colder and colder. When Patricia showed Ashley's Instagram posts, the judge actually shook her head. I could see her lips pressed together in a thin line of disapproval. At one point, she interrupted Daniel's lawyer mid-sentence. "Counsel," she said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Are you seriously trying to claim this penthouse was a business investment?" Daniel's lawyer stammered something about future rental income. The judge asked for documentation. Rental agreements. Business plans. Anything showing this was a legitimate investment. Daniel couldn't provide any of it because it didn't exist. It was exactly what it looked like. A middle-aged man spending his wife's money to impress his mistress. The judge looked at Daniel like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. During the plaintiff's cancer treatment, she said slowly, letting the words hang in the air. "You started an affair and purchased a property without your wife's knowledge using joint marital funds. Is that correct?" Daniel tried to explain. He talked about the stress he was under. How hard it had been to watch me go through treatment. How he'd needed an escape. Every word that came out of his mouth made him look worse. Ashley, who'd been whispering and giggling earlier, had gone completely silent. She was staring at her lap, her face red, probably realizing for the first time how bad all of this looked. The judge asked me to speak. She wanted to hear my side of the story directly. I stood up, and my voice was steady when I talked about finding the lump. About the fear. About going through surgery and chemotherapy. About sitting alone in treatment while my husband was with his mistress. About discovering the affair through social media. About finding out he'd used our money to buy her a penthouse. When I finished, there was silence in the courtroom. The judge looked at Daniel for a long moment, then back at me. "Mrs. Foster," she said, "I am truly sorry for what you've been through." Then she turned to Daniel, and her voice could have frozen water. "Mr. Foster, your behavior throughout your wife's illness has been unconscionable. Not only did you commit adultery, but you used marital assets to finance that affair and attempted to hide those assets in the divorce proceedings." Patricia squeezed my hand under the table. I knew what was coming. I could see it in the judge's face. This wasn't going to be a standard divorce settlement. This was going to be justice. When the judge delivered her verdict, I had to fight to keep my face neutral. Daniel wasn't so successful. The judge awarded me 65% of all marital assets. Not 50-50 like a normal divorce. 65%. She cited financial deception, adultery during a spouse's serious illness, and attempted asset hiding as her reasons for the unequal split. But then came the part that really mattered. The penthouse. That luxury apartment Daniel had bought to impress Ashley. The one with the stunning city views and the £15,000 monthly mortgage. The judge awarded it to me. All of it. The property, the furniture, everything. And here's the beautiful twist. She also awarded me all the debts associated with it. Daniel's lawyer immediately jumped up to object. "Your Honor," he said, his voice getting higher. "That mortgage payment is financially crippling. You can't expect my client's wife to take on that burden." The judge looked at him like he'd just said the stupidest thing she'd ever heard. "Counsel," she said coldly, "your client chose to purchase this property during the marriage using marital funds. He chose to take on this debt. The plaintiff is entitled to the asset and will assume responsibility for the associated obligations. Case closed." I accepted the ruling with a calm nod, but inside I was already 3 steps ahead. I'd been planning this moment for weeks. Daniel's face had gone completely white. Ashley was staring at him with this confused expression, probably trying to figure out what had just happened. They didn't understand yet. But they would. Oh, they would. The divorce was finalized on a Friday. The following Monday morning, I put the penthouse on the market. Not at the asking price. Not even at market value. I listed it as a quick sale to the first buyer who could close within 30 days. My estate agent thought I was crazy. "Sarah," she said, "this property is worth at least £3 million. You're listing it at 2.4. You're leaving money on the table." "I know exactly what I'm doing," I told her. "Trust me." Daniel called me that afternoon, screaming down the phone. What the hell are you doing? You can't sell that place. It's worth a fortune. That's the point, I said calmly. It's worth a fortune that neither of us can afford to maintain. So I'm selling it. He threatened to sue me. He said I was destroying something beautiful out of spite. What he didn't understand was that I wasn't destroying anything. I was saving myself. That penthouse was a financial black hole. £15,000 a month in mortgage payments. Another $3,000 in maintenance and taxes. It was bleeding money, and Daniel's construction business was already in trouble. He'd been counting on me getting stuck with it, slowly drowning in debt while he walked away free. But I had other plans. The penthouse sold in 18 days. The buyer was a young tech entrepreneur who paid cash, £2.4 million. After estate agent fees and closing costs, I netted about $2.2 million. Now here's where the mathematics of revenge get really beautiful. The original mortgage on the property was £2.7 million. That meant there was a £500,000 shortfall between what the place sold for and what was still owed on it. Daniel, as the person who'd taken out the original mortgage, as the co-signer on the loan, was still legally responsible for that difference. The bank didn't care that we were divorced. They didn't care that I'd sold the property. They wanted their money, and Daniel's name was on the paperwork. So let's add this up. I walked away with £2.2 million from the penthouse sale, plus my share of our other assets from the divorce settlement, plus my own savings that I'd protected, plus my salary from my job, which I'd kept throughout treatment. Daniel was left with a £500,000 debt on a property he no longer owned, plus all the other debts his spending spree had created, plus a failing business that he'd neglected while he was playing house with Ashley. I used my money wisely. I bought a beautiful Georgian townhouse in a quiet part of Cheshire. Paid cash. No mortgage. No debt. Just a gorgeous home that was completely mine. I put money aside for any future health issues. I invested the rest sensibly. For the first time in my adult life, I felt financially secure and completely independent. Daniel wasn't so lucky. Within 4 months, he had to declare bankruptcy. His construction company collapsed completely. He couldn't get credit. He couldn't bid on new projects. His reputation in the industry was destroyed, not just because of the financial mess, but because word had gotten around about how he'd treated his sick wife. In the construction world, which runs on relationships and trust and reputation, that kind of story spreads like wildfire. Nobody wanted to work with him. Nobody wanted to hire him. He'd become toxic. The poetic justice didn't stop there. Ashley, who'd been living her best influencer life on Daniel's money, disappeared the moment his financial situation became clear. Her Instagram went through a dramatic transformation. Gone were the photos from the penthouse and the designer shopping trips. Suddenly, it was all personal growth posts and finding yourself content, posted from what looked suspiciously like a small bedroom in someone's suburban house. Probably her parents' place. She unfollowed Daniel, deleted every photo of them together, started posting inspirational quotes about how material things don't matter and true happiness comes from within. The comments on her posts were brutal. Her followers had figured out what happened, and they weren't shy about calling her out. Within 6 months, she'd made her account private, and her follower count had dropped by half. 6 months after everything was finalized, I ran into Daniel at a cafe in Alderley Edge. I was meeting Rachel for coffee, feeling good, wearing a new dress I'd bought just because I liked it. My hair had grown back thicker and curlier than before. I was healthy. I was happy. I was thriving. Daniel was sitting alone at a corner table, looking at his phone with this defeated expression on his face. He'd aged. I'm not exaggerating. He looked like he'd aged 10 years and 6 months. His hair was grayer. He had lines on his face I'd never noticed before. He was wearing jeans and a jumper that had seen better days, a far cry from the expensive suits he used to wear. He saw me before I could leave. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he stood up and walked over. "Sarah," he said, and his voice was different. Smaller somehow. "Can we talk? For just a minute." I glanced at Rachel, who raised her eyebrows like she was ready to intervene if I needed her to. But I nodded. 1 minute. We stepped outside, and Daniel looked at me with something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Regret, maybe. Or just the realization of how badly he'd messed up his entire life. "I hope you're happy," he said, and there was real bitterness in his voice. "You took everything from me." "I didn't take anything," I replied calmly. You gave it away when you decided to cheat on your sick wife and use our money to buy a penthouse for your girlfriend. The judge gave me what I was entitled to. What I did with it after that was my business. But it was worth millions, he said, his voice rising. You sold it for nothing just to spite me. I sold it because I couldn't afford the mortgage any more than you could, I said. The difference is, I was smart enough to cut my losses before it dragged me under. You would have kept that place until it bankrupted you, just to prove some point. He didn't have an answer for that. We stood there in silence for a moment. I looked at this man I'd loved for 13 years, this man who'd abandoned me when I needed him most, and I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Nothing. My cancer is in remission, I said finally. In case you were wondering. I'm healthy. I'm doing really well at work. I've got a beautiful home with no debt. I've been traveling again. I went to Italy last month. Rome. It was amazing. I watched something crumble in his expression. Good for you, he said quietly. I mean that. I'm glad you're okay. I need you to understand something, I said. What you did to me, leaving me while I was fighting cancer, using our money to set up your mistress, trying to cheat me in the divorce, that was unforgivable. But it was also the best thing that could have happened to me, because it showed me exactly who you are. And it forced me to become stronger than I ever thought I could be. Daniel looked like he wanted to say something, but I held up my hand. I'm not interested in your apologies or your excuses, I continued. I just want you to know that while you're struggling with bankruptcy and a ruined reputation, I'm living my best life. Every single day, I wake up grateful that I'm not married to you anymore. That's the real victory. I turned and walked back into the cafe, back to Rachel, who was watching through the window with a proud smile on her face. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed. These days, my life looks completely different. I still work in tech consulting, but I've been promoted to director level. I bought that Georgian townhouse, and I've decorated it exactly how I want it. Not how Daniel wanted it. Not what looks good for entertaining clients. Just things I love. I've got a garden now. I've taken up painting, something I always wanted to try but never had time for. I've been on dates with kind, interesting men who think my strength and independence are attractive rather than threatening. My cancer is still in remission. I go for regular checkups, and so far, everything looks good. My hair grew back differently, these thick dark curls that I've learned to love. People tell me I look younger now than I did before the diagnosis. I think it's because I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. Not performing happiness for social media or to maintain some image. Just happy. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I've traveled to places I'd always wanted to see. I've started volunteering with a cancer charity, helping other people going through what I went through. That's been surprisingly healing. Being able to take my experience, as awful as it was, and use it to help someone else feel less alone. As for Daniel, I've heard updates through mutual acquaintances. He's working as a project manager for someone else's construction company, making a fraction of what he used to earn, living in a rented flat. His bankruptcy will be on his record for years. His reputation in the industry never recovered. He's basically starting over from scratch in his late 40s. Ashley, from what I can tell from her now private Instagram, moved back in with her parents and got a regular job. Something in retail, I think. The influencer dream died pretty quickly once the money ran out. She's dating someone new, someone her own age, and seems to have learned that maybe building your life around other people's money isn't the smartest plan. The other day, a younger colleague at work told me about her relationship troubles. Her boyfriend had been acting distant and secretive. She was worried he might be cheating. I told her to trust her instincts. I told her that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And I told her that no matter what happens, she's strong enough to handle it and come out the other side even stronger. She asked me how I could be so sure. I smiled and said, because I've been there. And if I can survive cancer and divorce and betrayal all at once and come out thriving on the other side, trust me, you can handle whatever life throws at you. So that's my story. It's a story about how the worst thing that ever happened to me, getting cancer and having my husband abandon me, somehow led to the best life I could have imagined. It's a story about how sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about refusing to let them destroy you. It's about taking the hand you're dealt, no matter how terrible it is, and playing it so well that you end up winning anyway. Every morning now, I wake up in my beautiful debt-free home, surrounded by things I chose, with money in the bank and my health restored. And somewhere across town, Daniel wakes up with ruined credit, a destroyed reputation, and the knowledge that his moment of selfishness cost him absolutely everything. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what happened. And honestly, I'm not. Not anymore. Because anger would mean I'm still giving Daniel power over my emotions. And he doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve any part of me. What I am is grateful. Grateful that I survived. Grateful that I discovered the truth before wasting any more years with someone who didn't value me. Grateful for the strength I found in myself that I never knew existed. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: the truth always comes out. Karma is real. And the best revenge isn't destroying someone else. It's building a life so good, so full, so rich, that you realize they were never worthy of being part of it in the first place. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you've been through something similar, or if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share it. And remember, no matter what you're going through right now, you're stronger than you think. You will survive. And on the other side of survival is a life better than anything you imagined. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.